parents pressured me to forgive my brother for his affair with my ex-wife and her pregnancy, then demanded I support them financially. My wife, Amy 26F, cheated on me with my brother, Jake 26 meters, which is why I 34 meters recently got divorced. My family did choose them over me, and yes, that did happen, but karma had other ideas. To help you see how my entire life culminated in this awful betrayal, let me begin from the beginning. Jake, who was born when I was 8 years old, was always the golden child while I was growing up in suburban Boston. In the eyes of our parents, Robert 58 meters and Sarah 56F, I seemed to vanish. Although they weren't particularly nasty, I was undoubtedly treated as an afterthought. This reality was pounded home to us during our entire upbringing. I can still clearly recall winning my first science fair in 6th grade. I devoted months to creating a functional model of solar system dynamics, replete with orbital calculations and revolving planets. I received first prize and a special commendation for mathematical precision from the judges. Jake had a t-ball practice, not even a game, just practice, so my parents didn't attend the ceremony at all. The walls of our living room were covered with Jake's participation ribbons, while my award remained unopened on the mantel for a week before vanishing into the basement. Our entire childhood was shaped by that. Jake's Blues grades were celebrated, but my straight A's were met with distracted nods. My mother first expressed concern that Jake could feel bad about his regular classes as a result of my enrollment in the advanced placement program. Jake received a new automobile for his 16th birthday to help build his confidence, according to Dad, whereas I had to start working part-time at 16 in order to earn money for college and buy my own clothes. Graduating from high school was very difficult. Instead of seeing me get my graduation and give my valedictorian address, my parents spent most of the ceremony photographing Jake playing in the stands. When he was just 10 years old, Jake was whining about being bored, so they didn't hear me announce my mid-scholarship. A celebration dinner for Jake's early baseball season was transformed into a party because Jake seemed a little down about all your achievements. Mom even encouraged me to tone down my presentation of my college intentions. I scarcely noticed that I had been accepted to MIT on a partial scholarship because Jake had recently made the junior baseball team. That's nice, honey. But did you hear Jake might make a starting pitcher next season? Mom said. I recall I came to the realization that nothing I ever did would be sufficient at that point. I served as the practice child, the test subject for Jake, their actual parenting endeavor. With my scholarship, the money I saved from 3 part-time jobs, and the resolve to never look back, I set out from it at the age of 18. Jake had a summer league game the day I moved into my dorm, so my parents left early. They didn't even assist me with unpacking. Those were life-changing college years. I was evaluated entirely on my own merits for the first time. Upon discovering my aptitude for software architecture, I immersed myself in computer science and finished with honors. Several IT organizations were interested in my distributed systems optimization undergraduate thesis, and by the time I graduated, I had received 5 job offers. A part of me still hoped that things may improve, so I picked a promising company in Boston, in part because it was near home. I was in charge of my own development team within 2 years, and by the 5th year, I was the youngest senior developer in the company's history. My folks were too busy assisting Jake with his 3rd college major change to really understand what I did for a job 4 years ago at a tiny coffee shop close to my workplace. The real turning point in my life occurred. Amy and I met there while completing her teaching degree. She was working as a barista. She somehow managed to recall each regular's order as well as a personal characteristic. She acknowledged that she had been writing encouraging notes on my coffee cups for weeks before she eventually consented to go out with me. I hadn't even noticed because I had been so focused on my task. 6 hours were spent on our first date. We discussed everything, including our families, anxieties, and dreams. She seemed to genuinely get my family's problems. When I informed her about my early years, She responded, "They're blind. They have no idea what they were missing." I felt like I was being seen for the first time. The following year seemed unreal. We prepared extravagant meals together, spent weekends discovering Boston's hidden bookstores, and went trekking in New Hampshire. She pushed me to go for a big promotion at work, helped me get ready for the interviews, and celebrated my success more than anybody else. She shed joyful tears when I asked her to marry me after 14 months, saying she had been hoping I would. At the time, I believed our wedding was tiny and ideal. When my family arrived, they talked about Jake's new job opportunity in California for the whole of the reception. In order to show everyone a text message from Jake regarding his second interview, Mom actually cut short Amy's father's toast. In hindsight, I should have recognized it as a warning flag, but Amy dismissed it with a laugh, stating that she thought their commitment to Jake was sweet. Our marriage was everything I could have imagined for 3 years. We began discussing starting a family, acquired a lovely condo in Cambridge, and took trips when we could. Amy made our house feel like the cozy, caring home I never had as a child by decorating it with pictures of our travels and planting a little container garden on our balcony. We were a team. She constantly asserted she would remark, "Us against the world." Then Jake got in touch last year. After failing to succeed in California due to the startup culture not being his vibe, he returned to Boston. He wrote me a lengthy email in which he expressed his longing for his older brother and his desire to mend our relationship. After growing up, he wrote, "Family should stick together." After a week of contemplation, Amy urged me to give him a chance. "People evolve," she stated. Perhaps they've come to terms with their losses. I decided to go out to supper with Jake. Against my better judgment, although awkward, the first meeting showed promise. Jake seemed to have grown up and become more self-aware. He stated he wanted to make atonement and acknowledge that he had had it easy as a child. A week later, I introduced him to Amy, and they clicked right away as I would learn later. Everything appeared to be ideal at first. A couple of times a week, Jake would stop by for dinner. He seemed genuinely interested in my work, brought wine, and entertained us with tales of his exploits in California. He even stood up for me when our parents began showing their customary partiality at Sunday dinners. In fact, I began to think that we might be biological brothers. Subtly, however, things began to change. Jake started unexpectedly visiting our home sometimes while I was still at work. While she graded papers, Amy stated they were simply hanging out and that it was good to have company. He would remain for supper and use my coffee mug while chatting with my wife and making inside jokes. I chose to overlook the warning signs, which included their sudden silence when I walked into a room, Amy's phone abruptly turning to the side when I sat next to her, their knowing glances at dinner, and their coincidental meetings at the coffee shop or grocery store. The announcement of the pregnancy followed. We were eating dinner at home, and naturally, Jake was present when Amy broke the news. Although I was ecstatic, Jake's response ought to have told me everything. He was not in the least bit surprised. Rather, he smiled with a knowing satisfaction that made my stomach flip. Jake was there all the time after that. He would talk about how active he would be in our child's life, touch Amy's stomach without asking, and make remarks about the baby's future. Despite my efforts to organize a romantic baby moon trip, hubby and I inadvertently invited himself. He said the baby needs both of us, and Amy concurred. I still remember the night I found out. I had been lying awake mentally reliving months of dubious events. Amy was on the nightstand charging her phone while she slept peacefully next to me. I had never once looked at her phone in our 6 years together. I was a believer in trust and privacy. But I had a need to know something. They had hundreds of communications dating back 6 months. While I was at work, we had secret meetings in hotels, plans for their future together, conversations about their infant. Soon after he returned to my life, they had begun sharing a bed. They had intended to tell me after the baby was born, assuming that I would be too attached to the child to leave. Therefore, the pregnancy wasn't an accident. I felt my world come crashing down, message by message. As I read every single message till dawn, I was seated in our reading chair with Amy's phone in my hand when she woke up. She was immediately aware of what I had found. She sobbed. We didn't intend for this to occur. Jake and I simply clicked. He knows me better than you ever could. In fact, she spoke the most overused phrase in the history of affairs. We were going to tell you, but we didn't want to worry you. After I became pregnant, I called my parents that morning in the hopes that they would finally support me. I was astounded by their answer. Mom said, Jake made a mistake, but he's going to be a father now. You must forgive him and act like the bigger person. Consider the infant. Consider the grandchild that was produced when their younger son was having an affair with the wife of their older son. They were also protecting him once more. There are some things that never change. That day, I called a divorce attorney and checked into a hotel. Amy took turns pleading for my pardon and condemning me for deserting our family. At work, Jake attempted to corner me by claiming that we needed to have a man-to-man conversation. I reported him for workplace harassment and had security escort him out. Going through a divorce was a nightmare. Amy and Jake claim their affair started because of my emotional unavailability, portraying me as domineering and emotionally abusive. According to my parents' testimony, I had always been difficult and had lifelong jealousy of Jake. Mom even blamed the mediator for the entire problem, saying that I should have been more considerate of Jake's demands. After that, I stopped negotiating. After we went to court, Amy managed to get a respectable settlement. It seems that in Massachusetts, having an affair with your husband's brother does not waive alimony. Small success, though, like preserving the condo and the majority of my pay. I am currently 34 years old, divorced, and totally estranged from my family. I've changed my email, blacklisted their numbers, and told building security to never let them in on certain days. I find myself questioning whether there is any way I could have avoided this if I'd been a better spouse, brother, or son. However, I later realized that I wasn't the one who deceived everyone. Turning family against family was not something I did. It's said that everyone eventually experiences karma. I'm not sure if that's accurate, but I do know that I'm sick of being the family scapegoat. Having to be understanding when everyone else gets away with ruining lives is something I'm tired of. I've lived my entire life as the one who has passed over, the second best option, and the afterthought. No more. However, just when I believed that things couldn't get much worse, they were about to get even more bizarre. Update 1. I assumed my family would finally leave me alone when I stopped communicating with them after the divorce. About a month has passed since everything happened, and I've been making an effort to concentrate on getting better and moving on. However, it seems that they had different ideas. When our office receptionist messaged me yesterday morning while I was in the middle of an important meeting with my development team, she said that my mother, Sarah, was in the lobby and insisted on seeing me. She reportedly spent more than an hour there telling everyone she just needed to talk to her son. Since my team had seen Jake's prior incident at work, they could tell how uneasy I was after ignoring her and carrying on with my job. My phone began to ring with calls from unidentified numbers. It seems that my mother had enlisted a number of family members to attempt to contact me. I thought it might be work-related when I finally answered one phone, but it was my Aunt Linda, 5 for F, with whom I hadn't spoken in years, not even bothering to say hello. She began, "Your brother and Amy are really struggling. Jake still hasn't found a job, and the settlement money is running low. Well, no one wants to hire him." After that, Jake's reputation appears to have been ruined by his affair with Amy, which somehow made its way into his professional network. After doing background checks, a number of prospective employers withdrew their offers. I couldn't help but notice the irony. For once, his actions had tangible repercussions. This is where it becomes ridiculous, though. In addition to purchasing groceries and paying their rent, my parents have also been paying for Amy's prenatal medical expenses. My father's retirement funds are being depleted, and they are now in a panic as they run out of money themselves. Their remedy: they want me to provide financial assistance for the woman who deceived me and the brother who ruined my marriage. My mother didn't just show up at my office, she had a plan. She chose to ambush me at work since she knew I wouldn't return their calls. After threatening to stay until closing time, she launched into a prepared speech on forgiveness and family responsibilities. When I eventually made my way down to the lobby to handle the problem, she easily forgot that I had to pay for my own college education when she remarked, "Your father and I have always provided for both our sons. It's time for you to take charge and support your brother during this difficult time." What I was hearing was unbelievable. A rough patch. My wife became pregnant after he had an affair with her, and he attempted to claim the child as his own. That is a purposeful set of decisions, not a tough stretch. She foolishly responded, "Well, if you had paid more attention to Amy's needs before." I phoned security. I interrupted her and urged her to go. I loudly announced in the lobby that I was leaving my own brother and his unborn child behind. Before she left, despite their support, a number of my co-workers found this to be humiliating. Jake sent me an email later that evening. In order to get around my blocks, he had made a new account. Half-hearted apologies and barely disguised requests for financial assistance were mixed together in the email. He wrote about the difficulties Amy was having with her pregnancy, something I was unaware of, how they were unable to pay for appropriate medical treatment, and how the stress was impacting my future nephew or niece. The attachment, a sonogram image, was what truly drew my attention. Even though the manipulation techniques were clear, they were attacking me emotionally with their unborn child, the result of their affair. In an attempt to take a new tack, my father arrived at my apartment complex the following day and pretended to be there only to talk. I declined to let him in when the front desk called. Then, for 2 hours, he stood in the lobby, telling everyone who would listen how his successful son was causing his brother's family to suffer. Since then, I've had to inform the management of my building of the circumstances and ask them to bar any of my family members from entering. I don't see any other choice, even though it's awkward to publicly discuss my private issues in this way. Additionally, the harassment has spread to social media. On Facebook, Amy has been making vague accusations against me, claiming that she was abandoned throughout her pregnancy by her emotionally unavailable husband, adding his own remarks about how some people need to step up and take responsibility. Jake has been reposting these posts. He seems to be unaware of the irony of discussing responsibility while pleading for freebies. I find it infuriating how they have twisted this story. They portray me as the bad guy since I didn't provide for the folks who deceived me. They seem to believe that I have a duty to save them from their own mess simply because I'm succeeding professionally. I've started keeping a record of everything, including emails, problems at work, and posts on social media. According to my lawyer, if they try anything legal, we could need it. She is especially worried that they would attempt to use the legal system to obtain more support. The worst thing, I've received messages from certain family friends and distant relatives encouraging me to put family first and be the bigger person. They don't seem to realize that Jake and Amy ruined my last remnant of a family. Even though I'm steadfast in my resolve to not assist them, the persistent harassment is wearing me down. To cope with all of this, I've been seeing a therapist, and I'm thinking of searching for a new job in a different place. Although I don't like the idea of fleeing, I'm at a loss on what to do to find serenity. My own family has descended to a level I never imagined, but here we are. They are not merely pleading for assistance. They are attempting to intimidate and coerce me into giving money to the same individuals who ruined my life. I get a feeling that this isn't over yet. Desperate people do desperate things, and they're growing desperate. Update 2? Suddenly, my former partner attorney sent me a notice. Jake and Amy were trying to sue me for further support, citing increased medical needs and changed circumstances. My lawyer, who had been recording all of their harassment incidents, was enraged but ready. Last week was the scheduled court date. It was unreal to enter that courtroom. Amy was dressed to highlight her obvious pregnancy. Our parents sat directly behind them, looking smugly arrogant, while Jake sat behind her in our father's old suit. First up was their lawyer, who told a story that almost made me chuckle. They claimed that, because they had undervalued the emotional toll of the divorce, the initial payment was insufficient. They said that my pattern of workplace harassment had prevented Jake from finding a job, and even implied that the stress caused by my vindictive behavior was putting Amy's pregnancy in jeopardy because he had allegedly required specialized care due to high-risk issues. The way my lawyer responded was heartbreaking. She started by playing surveillance tape from my office building, which included my mother's theatrical displays, Jake's violent conduct, and Amy's attempts to enter through the rear door. She then presented social media evidence, including a detailed chronology of their campaign of online abuse. Their financial records were the true surprise. Jake had rejected multiple jobs as being beneath him, not because he was having trouble finding employment, a result of my pestering for the court's pity. Amy had turned down a full-time teaching job in order to keep her jobless, pregnant woman status. Amy's prenatal records, which revealed a perfectly healthy pregnancy with typical expenses, were the most incriminating of all. They had been playing pawn with their unborn child. The judge was clearly upset. The judge interrupted their attorney when he attempted to explain that emotional discomfort warranted more help. Your client seemed to have committed perjury, counselor. Do you want to keep going in this direction? Their lawyer returned with a somber expression after a short break. Jake was pale, Amy was crying, and their united front had fallen apart. I was pleasantly surprised by the judge's decision. In addition to rejecting their motion, he also lowered my alimony payments by 60%. Parties who misuse the legal system are not viewed favorably by this court, he said. Mr. Smith seems to be the victim of a well-planned scheme to exploit him financially and emotionally. The fallout happened quickly. Amy decided she could work after Jake unexpectedly landed a job in retail. In their final message, my parents accused me of destroying Jake's last chance and assured me that they would never forgive me for abandoning my family, citing irreconcilable differences regarding truthfulness. Their attorney resigned from their representation. My organization increased security and barred them from the property. I learned that my parents had taken out a second mortgage to pay for legal bills, and that Jake and Amy were arguing over money all the time via common acquaintances. Finally, I feel like I can breathe. I can rebuild my savings thanks to the lower expenses, and I'm thinking about accepting a job offer in Seattle. Letting someone suffer the repercussions of their actions is sometimes the finest form of retaliation. However, I have a feeling that this story is far from over. Update 3. I want to start by thanking this community. I have remained strong during this entire fiasco thanks to your support and remarks. Here is what may be my story's last update. Aunt Linda, the sister of my father, unexpectedly contacted me a few weeks after the court triumph. I was interested enough to listen to her because she has never been involved in family conflict, a huge error. Trying to seem worried, she began, "Your father isn't getting any younger. His health is suffering as a result of all this stress." She continued by talking about how my parents would lose their retirement funds, how they had to refinance their home to pay for Jake and Amy's expenditures, and how family should stick together no matter what. She changed strategy when I didn't react with pity right away. "Did you realize that every night your mother sobs herself to sleep? Even though they may have acted inappropriately against you as a child, they are still your parents. Jake remains your brother despite everything that has transpired." At last, I cut her off. "What took place are you referring to?" "The months he spent having sex with my wife, getting her pregnant, and then attempting to claim the child as his own. That's what took place." I was astounded by her response. "Well, perhaps you could have been more involved in your marriage." In fact, she attempted to place the blame for their affair on me, claiming that my jealousy of Jake as a child had produced a toxic environment that pushed them together. It was so ridiculous I laughed, really laughed. Another member of the family was attempting to deceive me into taking accountability for Jake and Amy's behavior. What's different this time? It didn't move me at all. Linda, I asked, why don't you assist them if you're so worried about their financial status? Your husband's legal practice is doing well and you possess 3 rental properties. Why am I the only one who is supposed to stand by them? That was different, she sputtered, adding that I had a special obligation as Jake's brother. She said she didn't want to take sides when I asked her why she hadn't stepped in during all of this. But now you're picking sides, I said. You decided to come to me and demand that I pay for their consequences rather than admit the harm they caused. She then revealed what she believed to be her secret weapon. Your father is thinking of retiring early because of stress. The house may need to be sold. Is seeing your folks lose everything because you're too proud to assist what you want, I said. No, Linda, they're losing everything as a result of their decision to condone Jake's actions. Once more, they, like Jake and Amy, are paying the price for their own decisions, and what do you know? I'm not responsible for fixing that. When I'm older and alone, family is all we have in the end, she emphasized, threatening that I would regret this. No, I replied. Self-respect is all we have in the end, and I'm finally choosing to keep mine. In addition to blocking her number, I hung up her call. However, it had the unanticipated benefit of providing me with clarity. I felt truly free for the first time from the obligation and guilt that had plagued me since I was a young child. I accepted the Seattle job offer later that day. The change of location feels appropriate, and the firm is providing a substantial promotion. I'm starting over and selling the condo. Yesterday, my co-workers threw me a farewell party. I learned what true support looks like from these individuals who supported me during the darkest months of my life with a straightforward statement. Your worth isn't determined by those who couldn't see it. My closest colleague gave me a card that was signed by everyone. I've discovered that family is about mutual support, respect, and trust, rather than blood. The friends who supported me, the co-workers who shielded me, and ultimately myself proved to be my true family. I'm done. To my parents, Jake, Amy, and now Linda, your decisions brought you to this point, and you are responsible for the results. I'm not available to be your ATM or your scapegoat anymore. For my part, I'm excited for my new life in Seattle. I'm thrilled about the initiatives that await me at my company's renowned West Coast location. More significantly, I can't wait to create a life in which I'm respected for who I am, rather than compared to someone else's golden child. Writing my last post from an empty condo surrounded by stacked boxes seems oddly appropriate. I start driving west tomorrow. I'll be looking back on my past life with all of its suffering and family strife. Yes, their baby was born last week, in case you were wondering. No, I haven't contacted anyone or seen any pictures. I've closed that chapter of my life. Again, I want to thank Reddit for supporting me over this trip. When I was having self-doubt, your encouragement and counsel kept me going. Anyone going through a similar situation should know that their value transcends their family's treatment of them. Walking away is sometimes the most self-loving thing you can do. It's time to go. Cheers to fresh starts. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you. Dad gave the business to my brother-in-law instead of me at his retirement party. Now they're asking me for help after fraud charges. My father retired 2 years ago as the CEO of the lab equipment company he founded. He had assured me for nearly 7 years that I-30M would become the next CEO. But on the day of his retirement celebration, he announced that my brother-in-law would be the new CEO. It came as a tremendous surprise to me because I was the one who had planned the party, and I had no idea what was going to happen. I clapped along with everyone else as he delivered the announcement, but then I challenged him. He explained why he let me down. Apparently, my brother-in-law Zach 3-4M was more of a son to him than I was, as I had disappointed him. Let me tell you that Zach had only been in the business for approximately a year, whereas I had devoted 7 years of my life to it. We had known Zach for a long time, since he and my sister 33F had been dating for about 5 years and married for 2. When my father retired, I worked with Zach, and he seemed like a kind guy. Still, I couldn't accept the reality that my father thought Zach was more of a son than I was. When I asked my father to expand on how I had failed him, he answered the most ridiculous thing I could think of, and I lost all respect for him. He explained that it had been a difficult decision, but he had to do what was best for the company. He said that someone as mentally weak as I was could never be a competent leader. That's why he passed me aside in favor of Zach, who he thought had more attributes in common with him. He was alluding to my diagnosis of generalized anxiety disorder, which I had mistakenly disclosed to my family a few months before my father retired. One night, while eating dinner with my parents, I accidentally dropped a little container of anti-anxiety medications that had been prescribed to me. I needed to explain everything to them. My mother was cool with it, but my father did not believe in the value of mental health. He thought that being tough was the answer to everything, and when I told him about my nervousness, he began to lose faith in me. I'd like to stress that my anxiety had never harmed the quality of my job, nor had I allowed it to impair my capacity to run the company. I'm sure many people in upper management deal with anxiousness without having it affect their work, but my father told me I had disappointed him by making excuses for my weakness and turning to medications. After much deliberation, he concluded that Zach was the ideal choice to take over the company instead of me. He told me I could quit if I wanted, but he didn't trust me to manage the company the way he did. He refused to give me the reins since I had demonstrated that I was not strong. It wasn't only what he said, it was also that he had encouraged me to assume I would be the next CEO. Despite the fact that he had made his decision well before the retirement party, it was quite hurtful. That night, I left the celebration early and never spoke with my father again because he had deeply injured me. At the end of the day, it was his company, and he could hire anybody he believed was the greatest fit. If he felt that my nervousness would get in the way, I had to respect his decision. However, I didn't have to put up with that type of rudeness, so I decided to resign, and within a few weeks, I began working elsewhere. My mother was the only family member I kept in touch with. When my sister learned that I was retiring because I was furious that my father had appointed Zach as CEO instead of me, she interpreted it as a personal attack. Instead of attempting to understand where I was coming from, she contacted me to defend my father, and we got into a fight. After that, we stopped speaking. I haven't spoken to my father or sister in 2 years, and I haven't had any touch with Zach. I occasionally speak with my mother to see how she's doing. We try to meet at least once a month, and each time we do, she attempts to persuade me to make amends with my father, but I'm simply not interested. My mother contacted me about a week ago. Quite frantic, she informed me that Zach had been arrested for fraudulent actions, notably tax fraud. My father was also under scrutiny because of his former affiliation with the corporation. That upset me, but I had no idea what she expected me to do. She wanted me to speak with my father, smooth things out, and testify for him in court if required, because I had previously worked for the company. I was very clear with my mother that I was not going to get engaged in any way. I was confident that if my father was being examined, all of the company's upper management would be scrutinized as well. If Zach had committed fraud, it was a severe allegation, and I did not want to go into the specifics. All I knew was that the farther I got away from this disaster, the better off I would be. So I made it obvious to my mother that I was not going to stick my neck out for my father. They'd have to deal with it on their own because I didn't want any problems. Besides, if my father genuinely wanted my assistance, he should have approached me directly. Heck, the one who needs me. So why should I be the one to contact him first? My mother then told me that I was being childish and petty and that I needed to speak with my father and clear the air, since the family needed to keep together during this tough time. I felt she was being ridiculous, so I told her my decision was definite. I was not going to reach out to my father at any cost. She became enraged and accused me of being selfish and uncaring because even though the family was going through a lot, all I cared about was what happened 2 years before. I thought it was very insensitive of her to say so. If she had been in my situation, she would have felt as betrayed as I did, and she would not have been able to move on as soon. She would not have forgiven my father if she had been passed up for a position for which she had worked hard for nearly 7 years to circumstances beyond her control. It's unreasonable to ask me to forgive him, especially because my father has never even tried to apologize for what he did to me. I don't think anyone can forgive someone who doesn't apologize in the first place. So my mother and I argued for a time. Eventually, I informed her that this was definitely karma for screwing me over and that whatever was going on with Zach and my father right now, they deserved it. My mother went silent and eventually hung up. I felt horrible for saying that, so I planned to call her back a few hours later, but then I discovered she'd blocked me. I now feel extremely bad about what I said. Am I an *** hole for claiming that my father was definitely suffering retribution for passing me over for the CEO position? Update 1. Hello, everybody. My mother blocked me 1 week ago, and I still haven't been able to contact her. I'm trying not to feel guilty about it, but there's really not much I can do. She was the only person who kept in touch with me during the last 2 years, and without her, I feel completely lost and alone. Of course, I have my friends to rely on, and they have all been there for me, but my mother was the one person in my family that looked out for me, and I no longer had her. It's difficult coming to terms with this, and I truly want to contact her. However, I still believe that I have done nothing wrong. I don't think I said anything out of line, and I believe this is karma for booting me out of the firm for something I had no influence over. Yes, I have an anxiety issue, but as I previously stated, it is not crushing. It has no bearing on my leadership skills or ability to work as well as everyone else. It did not make me a disappointment, as my father said. Whether people like it or not, words have meaning. What my father told me on the night of his retirement party has stayed with me for the past 2 years. His unsophisticated approach about mental health and its relevance severely harmed my self-esteem. For several months, I continued doubting myself and questioning every decision I had made up to the moment. I felt like an imposter in my new work. It took a long time to get over that, and I'm still in treatment dealing with unresolved issues. However, my anxiousness has never impaired my capacity to work. In fact, I am one of the greatest employees at my current job. As my managers often tell me, they're even going to promote me soon. I genuinely believe my father made a significant mistake, and it is not my responsibility if my mother does not recognize this. It just sucks that she's choosing to side with him instead of telling him to F*** up and apologize to me. I don't understand why she believes I should make amends first. One thing is certain, I won't do anything for the family until they apologize for everything, and they must say it with sincerity. I refuse to be used again for selfish gain. Update 2. My sister stopped by to see me today, and it was stressful since she was emotional. She wants me to help her because her husband is in serious jeopardy, but I'm not sure what they expect me to do. My hands are tied here. This is a federal felony, and I don't think I can help them. She appeared to be in a bad situation, so I let her in. I tried to be as kind to her as possible because I am not a heartless person. I can't just slam the door when someone is in so much pain. She started crying on my shoulder, telling me she had no idea what was going on and that if she had known, she would have stopped it right away. She's quite concerned about what will happen to him, and she wants me to use my connections to help him out. I informed her that, unfortunately, I do not have any such ties that would be relevant here. Then she stated that our father had told us that one of my employers at the company where I presently work is married to a federal judge, and they were hoping I could speak with him and help them. She even suggested that they were willing to pay whatever it needed, but they simply wanted me to put them in touch with my employer and, by extension, his wife. I thought it was rather out of line for her to ask, let alone expect me to do it. I immediately answered no, telling her that I would prefer it if she left me alone. I assumed she had come for emotional support, but this was not something I was going to promote or even discuss. I had several reasons for saying no. The primary one being that I did not want to bring this up with my supervisors and link myself with a family of fraudsters. More significantly, I follow a personal code of morality and ethics. While I don't want anything bad to happen to my sister, if Zach had committed tax fraud, I didn't want to get involved in a situation where I was attempting to aid him or influence the issue in his favor. At this time, it wasn't personal against him. I simply didn't want to become engaged. The most I could give them was emotional support, but for me to go to such lengths was ridiculous. When I said no and asked her to leave, my sister soon said she couldn't believe I was still angry at her husband for something that wasn't even his fault. I attempted to clarify that this was not about that. In fact, I had never truly blamed him for what happened to my father. My father decided to give him the position instead of me and allow him to take over the company. If I were in his shoes, I would probably have accepted the post without considering who genuinely deserved it. Maybe I despised him slightly, but I didn't bear a grudge. He just wasn't important enough for that. I tried to inform my sister, but she refused to listen, insisting that our mother had been correct. There was no sense in talking to me because I was still petty and selfish. We ended up fighting again, and I told her to leave my home. She couldn't just walk in and disrespect me after everything had happened, especially after I tried to console her, even if she never showed me the same courtesy when I was going through a difficult period. In fact, she argued with me back then because she saw it as a personal attack. She continued to do the same thing 2 years later. So, if anyone was acting petty and selfish, it was my family. Her remark about our mother being correct made me feel bad because, for the past 2 years, my mother had been the only person there for me. Now it felt as if she hadn't been there for me at all, and everything was all for show. I was already deeply offended, and my sister refused to leave. She remained standing there, uttering one nasty thing after another. It soon got to the point where both of us were yelling so loudly at each other that I couldn't hear what she was saying. We ended up yelling at each other before she finally left. I feel terrible about everything that is going on, but at the same time, I believe they deserve what is coming to them. I believe they deserve every negative thing that happens to them. I honestly believe that maintaining in touch with my mother during the last 2 years was a major mistake, and that I should have broken off my entire family when I had the opportunity. Even now, I regret wanting to be there for my sister when she was behaving crazy. They are clearly no longer deserving of my time or attention, as evidenced by their repeated demonstrations. But for some reason, I find it really difficult to completely remove them from my life totally. I keep thinking about our youth, how close we were, and it pains me to talk about it today. All of this is absolutely terrible. I wish it was all over soon. Update 3. It's been 4 days since my sister visited, and we got into that argument. No one spoke to me for the following 4 days. I nearly thought they were going to leave me alone now. But today my parents arrived, and this time I was determined not to let them in. I had already made the mistake of letting my sister in the previous time, and we all know how that went. I wasn't about to repeat my mistake. They were standing outside the door, and I ordered them to leave, since I didn't think there was anything more to talk about. They couldn't possibly have anything new to say that hadn't previously been stated, so we could save each other's time and leave it at that. But my father stated he wasn't coming to ask for help. He truly came to apologize. He explained to me that after a long time, he understood he had done the wrong thing. He said that he had made the biggest mistake imaginable, and that nothing he said would make it right. But the least he could do was talk to me and apologize for everything. I have to tell you, that actually surprised me. since I was expecting him to walk up and start yelling at me or something. We hadn't spoken since the night of his retirement party, and I still remember him calling me a disappointment. I doubt I'll ever forget that. It was all I could think about while he apologized. When he was finished, I told him I was grateful that he had come all the way here to apologize, but it was difficult for me to forgive him. He couldn't just apologize and expect everything to be good, especially after 2 years of no communication and no effort on his part to contact me. I told him I needed time, and even then, I wasn't sure I'd ever be able to forgive him. It wasn't even the fact that he had screwed me over 2 years ago that worried me today, but rather the fact that it took him 2 years and so much hardship to realize he had done the wrong thing and eventually come and talk to me. That's what made me so sad. Even after that, I was expecting him to get angry and start yelling, but he simply stated that he was willing to wait for me to come around. He stated he'd be fine with it, even if I never spoke to him again or forgave him. He admits that 2 years ago he made a poor decision. He didn't take my mental health lightly. He simply went too far. He added that in his family, all guys were raised to be rough. They thought that getting through life meant struggling through everything. Anyone who claimed to be anxious or depressed was perceived as weak and making excuses for oneself. When he learned I was using anti-anxiety medication, he began to doubt my ability to lead the company he had started. The business was his creation from the beginning, and he couldn't afford to let it fail. His dread and paranoia got the best of him, and he made the worst option possible, which led to our current position. After we stopped talking, he revealed he was angry at me and had resented me for a few months. But then he started second-guessing himself, researching more about anxiety and its mechanisms. A few months ago, he began to suspect that he could be experiencing some symptoms and intended to contact me to resolve the situation. However, the entire episode with Zach came to light, and he was unable to do so. When my father finished describing everything, I felt weird about the scenario. I'm still not sure how I feel about it all, but at least he apologized. It may seem insignificant after 2 years, but it means a great deal to me. I don't know if I'll forgive him anytime soon, and I'm not sure if his apology was real, but I'm prepared to think about it and give it a try. For the time being, I told him to go home and that I would call him if I felt the need. He acknowledged that and departed. My mom and I didn't get to communicate much today. At first, she apologized to me, as did my father. Toward the end of our conversation, she expressed her willingness to wait for my forgiveness. She recognized that she had reacted too fast and rudely, rather than attempting to comprehend what I was going through. She also indicated that she had spoken with my sister, who wanted to repent for previously mistreating me. However, I don't consider that a true apology. My sister is an adult who can speak for herself. If she wants to apologize, she has to do so herself. I understand she is struggling with everything Zach-related right now, but there is no justification for how she behaved the last time she visited. Anyway, most of my family members have apologized to me, and it is now up to me to determine whether or not to accept their apologies. I won't lie, it will be a difficult decision to make. I've gone 2 years without speaking to any of these individuals, with the exception of my mother, and even she's having some difficulties right now. On the one hand, I want to forgive everyone and move on with my life since I don't believe animosity would help me go on. If I don't forgive them, these ideas will continue to haunt me, as they have for the past few years, and I don't want that. On the other hand, I'm not sure if forgiving them and leaving things in the past is the proper thing to do. I'm just less perplexed about what to do right now. If I'm honest, I miss my family tremendously, and everything is messing with my mind. I understand that some of you may believe they are only doing this because they are in problems right now, but I've already stated unequivocally that I cannot help them. Even if I could, I wouldn't. It's a matter of principle for me, and I'm not about to change it for anyone. So, if they are hoping for my assistance, they have already set themselves up for disappointment. However, if that is not on their minds, and they are truly attempting to repent and restore our broken connections. It complicates matters even further. I guess I'll sleep on it for a few days and consider what I want to do. I'll keep you all updated. Update 4. Hello, everyone. It has been 4 months since I last checked in here. I got incredibly busy in the meantime, which I'll explain later. Anyway, in my last report, I said that my dad and sister both apologized to me. My parents did this in person, but my sister, who was preoccupied with Zach's condition, asked my mother to apologize on her behalf. A few weeks later, my sister came to see me in person and apologized. I told her the same thing I told my parents. I'd think about it and let her know. I took my time, and last month I informed them I wanted to restore our friendship, but at my own pace. I said I'd be willing to eat dinner with them once a month and see where it goes, because I'm still unsure whether mending our friendship is a good idea. They were ecstatic and stated it was fine as long as I was happy. So, that is where we are currently. We ate supper together a few weeks ago. It was embarrassing enough, but I could see they were genuinely attempting to make amends for the past by being especially friendly to me. Zach was not at the dinner because my sister filed for divorce 2 months ago, and he had already been dismissed from his job. My father offered to make me the CEO, but I declined. I suppose I need more time. My father is currently handling things at the company, and he is still waiting for a response from me. I will think about it for a few more months and make a decision later, but I may accept. For the time being, I'm simply trying to focus on what I enjoy doing, which includes spending time with my girlfriend. She's an old acquaintance of mine, and we began dating a few months ago. That's what's kept me so busy lately. My life now includes more than just job and family problems. In reality, she was the one who persuaded me to forgive my family and give them another chance. I'm so glad we're together. I had liked her for a long time, but had never asked her out since I did not want to jeopardize our friendship. I am delighted she took the first step. Now that we're together, I'm as happy as I can be. Things are looking up for me. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.